The big danger. The galaxy was in trouble, and everyone knew it. For centuries, peace had reigned among the many different species that lived in the vastness of space. The Galactic Council, a group of wise and powerful leaders from each species, had worked hard to keep the peace. But now, that peace was about to be shattered by a threat from the past, a threat that no one had expected. Far away on the edge of the galaxy, in a dark and forgotten corner of space, an ancient enemy had awakened. This enemy, known as the Zarvians, had once been the most feared beings in the galaxy. They were cruel, powerful, and nearly impossible to defeat. Long ago, the species of the galaxy had joined forces to push the Zarvians into hiding, deep in the darkest part of space. But now the Zarvians were back and they were angry. They wanted revenge, and they wanted to destroy everything in their path. News of the Zarvians' return spread quickly throughout the galaxy. Panic took hold as planets and colonies realized what was coming. The Galactic Council knew they had to act fast if they wanted to stop the Zarvians. They sent out a call to every planet, asking for the bravest and strongest warriors to come forward. The galaxy needed heroes, and it needed them now. On Earth, the message from the Galactic Council was met with a mixture of fear and determination. Humans had always been a part of the galaxy's community, but they were often seen as weaker than other species. They didn't have the natural strength of the wargs, who could crush rocks with their bare hands. They didn't have the speed of the Vrixians, who could move faster than the eye could see. And they certainly didn't have the fierce battle instincts of the Drakons, who were born to fight. Instead, humans were known for something else: caution. They were seen as careful, sometimes too careful. Other species often called them cowards because they preferred to think things through before acting. They didn't rush into danger without a plan. They avoided unnecessary risks, and because of this, they were often underestimated. When the call for help reached Earth, the bravest humans hesitated. They had heard the stories of the Zarvians, and they knew how dangerous this enemy was. No one wanted to face them head-on. While the strongest species across the galaxy were sending their best warriors, Earth's champions were not so eager. They debated, they discussed, and they worried. But then, something unexpected happened. A small group of humans who were not known for their bravery stepped forward. These were the people who had been labeled as cowards by their own kind. They were scientists, engineers, and thinkers. They were the ones who always found ways to avoid danger rather than confront it. But now, they were volunteering to go and face the Zarvians. The Galactic Council was surprised when they received the list of volunteers from Earth. They had expected Earth to send its most powerful soldiers, not these cowards. But time was running out, and the Council couldn't afford to be picky. They accepted the volunteers, though they did so with low expectations. No one believed that these humans would make much of a difference in the fight against the Zarvians. As the humans prepared to leave Earth, they faced criticism from all sides. Other species mocked them, saying they were too weak and too afraid to be of any use. Even their own people doubted them. But the volunteers didn't let the criticism get to them. They knew what they were capable of, even if no one else did. The leader of the human volunteers was a man named Dr. Alex Carter. He was a brilliant scientist, known for his careful planning and his ability to solve complex problems. He wasn't a warrior, but he believed that intelligence and strategy could be just as powerful as brute strength. Dr. Carter and his team knew that they couldn't win by fighting the Zarvians the same way other species would. They would have to outthink them, and that's exactly what they planned to do. As they boarded their ship and prepared to leave Earth, the human volunteers knew they were facing impossible odds. The Zarvians were a force of nature, and no one expected these so-called cowards to survive, let alone succeed. But Dr. Carter and his team were determined. They had a plan, and they were ready to prove that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is step up when no one else will. The ship took off, heading towards the heart of the danger. The galaxy watched, waiting to see if these humans, with their cautious ways and their careful minds, could do what others could not. They were stepping into a battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy, and whether anyone believed in them or not, they were ready to fight. The cowardly heroes, the human volunteers, were on their way to the front lines, heading straight into the heart of danger. As their ship traveled through the dark void of space, the mood inside was tense but focused. They knew they were seen as weak, as cowards who had no place in a battle like this. But Dr. Alex Carter and his team didn't let that bother them. They had a plan, and they were determined to prove that being careful wasn't the same as being afraid. Dr. Carter stood at the front of the ship's control room, looking over the maps and data on the large screens. His team was small but skilled. There was Sarah, a brilliant engineer who could fix anything, Mark, a calm and collected strategist who always thought 3 steps ahead, and Lisa, a communications expert who could handle any negotiation. They weren't soldiers, but they were some of the smartest minds Earth had to offer. As they approached the rendezvous point where they would meet with the other species' forces, the tension grew. Dr. Carter could feel it in the air. His team was nervous, and he couldn't blame them. They were about to face an enemy that had once brought the galaxy to its knees. But instead of letting fear take over, Dr. Carter focused on the task at hand. "All right, team," Dr. Carter said, his voice steady. "We've been underestimated, but that's our advantage. While everyone else charges into battle, we're going to do what we do best: think. We're not here to be heroes, we're here to survive and win. And that means using our brains, not just our muscles." Sarah nodded, her hands busy checking the ship's systems. "We can't outfight them, but we can outsmart them. The Zarvians rely on fear and brute force. If we can find their weakness, we have a chance." Mark leaned over the map, his eyes scanning the terrain. "We need to gather as much information as possible before we make any moves. The more we know, the better our chances. We should avoid direct combat whenever we can." Lisa, sitting at her station, turned to face the others. "And I'll make sure we stay in contact with the Galactic Council and the other species. We need to keep them updated on our progress and coordinate our efforts." Dr. Carter looked at his team and felt a surge of pride. They might not have been the galaxy's fiercest warriors, but they were exactly what this mission needed. "Remember," he said, "we're not here to prove ourselves to anyone. We're here to do what needs to be done. Let's show them what humans can really do." As they approached the rendezvous point, their ship slowed down, and the massive fleet of the Galactic Council came into view. Hundreds of ships from different species were gathered, preparing for the battle ahead. The human ship was small compared to the others, and as they docked, they could feel the eyes of the other warriors on them. When Dr. Carter and his team stepped out of their ship, they were met with skepticism. The warriors from other species were tall, strong, and heavily armed. They looked at the humans with a mix of amusement and pity. Some even laughed openly, mocking the humans for their lack of weapons and armor. One of the Dracon leaders, a towering figure with scales and sharp claws, sneered at them. "So these are the humans who think they can help us? You don't look like much. Are you sure you're in the right place?" Dr. Carter didn't flinch. He knew this was coming. "We're here to do our part," he replied calmly. "We may not be as strong as you, but we have our own strengths. Let's see how things play out before you judge us." The Dracon leader scoffed and turned away, clearly unimpressed. The other warriors muttered among themselves, making it clear they didn't expect much from the humans. But Dr. Carter and his team weren't here to win a popularity contest. They were here to do their job. The Galactic Council held a briefing outlining the plan for the upcoming battle. The plan was simple: charge in with full force and overwhelm the Zarvians. It was a plan that relied on brute strength, and it was clear that the Council didn't think much of the humans' contributions. As the meeting ended, Dr. Carter pulled his team aside. "We're not going to follow their plan," he said quietly. "Charging in blindly is a mistake. We need to gather information first. We'll observe the Zarvians, study their movements, and find a way to hit them where it hurts." The team agreed. They knew that rushing into battle without a plan would only get them killed. They needed to be smart, to use their intelligence to find a way to defeat the Zarvians. While the other species prepared for an all-out attack, the humans started their own mission. Dr. Carter and his team spent hours analyzing data, scanning the battlefield, and looking for patterns in the Zarvians' movements. They discovered that the Zarvians had a communication network that was crucial to their coordination. If they could disrupt that network, it would throw the enemy into chaos. With this knowledge, the humans came up with a plan. They would infiltrate the Zarvian lines and plant a device that would jam their communications. It was a risky move, but it could turn the tide of the battle. The other species might see them as cowards, but the humans knew that their cautious approach could make all the difference. As they prepared for their mission, the tension in the air was thick. They were about to step into enemy territory, and if they were caught, it would be the end. But Dr. Carter and his team didn't back down. They knew what was at stake, and they were ready to prove that courage wasn't just about charging into battle. It was about doing what needed to be done, no matter the risk. And so, with their plan in place, the cowardly humans set out to do what no one else could. They were determined to show the galaxy that sometimes the greatest strength comes from using your mind, not just your muscles. A clever first fight. The human team moved silently through the darkness, their small ship navigating the asteroid field that surrounded the Zarvian stronghold. Dr. Alex Carter, Sarah, Mark, and Lisa were focused, each playing their part in the mission. The Zarvians were a terrifying enemy, but the humans were not here to fight them head-on. They were here to outsmart them. Dr. Carter sat at the controls, his eyes scanning the monitors for any sign of Zarvian patrols. "Keep an eye on the sensors, Sarah," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We need to stay hidden until we reach the target." Sarah, the team's engineer, was already on it. She had modified the ship's systems to reduce their energy signature, making them almost invisible to the Zarvian scanners. "We're flying under the radar," she replied, her fingers flying over the controls. "But we'll need to be quick once we're inside. They'll know we're there as soon as we start the disruption." Mark, the strategist, was studying the map of the Zarvian base. "The communication hub is heavily guarded," he said. "We can't fight our way through, but we can create a distraction. If we overload their power grid, it should cause enough chaos for us to slip in and plant the jamming device." Lisa, the communications expert, was ready to handle the timing. "I'll keep the lines open with the Galactic Council. They'll need to be ready to move as soon as we disrupt the Zarvian communications. This has to be perfectly coordinated." As they neared the Zarvian base, the tension in the ship grew. The plan was risky, and one mistake could mean disaster. But the team was confident in their abilities. They might not have been warriors, but they were clever, and they were about to prove that brains could beat brawn. The ship slipped through the asteroid field and approached the Zarvian base. It was a massive structure, dark and foreboding, with sharp angles and heavy defenses. The humans could see the patrols moving around the perimeter and the glowing energy lines that powered the base. "All right, we're in position," Dr. Carter said, bringing the ship to a stop just outside the base's sensor range. "Sarah, Mark, you're up. Get us inside." Sarah quickly activated the ship's hacking systems, her fingers dancing over the controls. "I'm in," she said after a few tense moments. "I've disabled their outer defenses. We can slip through, but we'll need to be fast." Mark nodded, his eyes focused on the map. "We'll enter through this maintenance tunnel. It's less guarded and it should take us close to the power grid. Once we're inside, we'll need to split up. Sarah, you handle the power grid. Lisa and I will head for the communication hub." Dr. Carter adjusted the ship's course, guiding it towards the tunnel entrance. The ship slipped into the tunnel, moving deeper into the heart of the Zarvian base. The walls were lined with cables and pipes, and the air was thick with tension. "Remember, we're not here to fight," Dr. Carter reminded his team. "We're here to disrupt and get out. No heroics. Stick to the plan." The ship came to a stop inside a small maintenance bay. The team quickly disembarked, their gear packed and ready. Sarah led the way, her engineering tools slung over her shoulder, while Mark and Lisa followed closely behind. Dr. Carter stayed behind to monitor their progress and keep the ship ready for a quick escape. As they moved through the dark corridors of the Zarvian base, the team kept their movements quiet and precise. They could hear the hum of machinery and the distant footsteps of Zarvian soldiers, but so far they had managed to avoid detection. They reached a junction where the tunnel split into two paths. Mark pointed to the left. "Sarah, the power grid is this way. Once you overload it, meet us back here. Lisa and I will take the right path to the communication hub." Sarah nodded, her face set with determination. "I'll see you back here. Good luck." The team split up, each group heading towards their target. Sarah moved quickly and quietly, her mind focused on the task ahead. She reached the power grid, a massive structure filled with humming energy conduits and control panels. It was heavily guarded, but Sarah knew how to bypass the security systems. She slipped into a maintenance alcove and began her work. Meanwhile, Mark and Lisa moved towards the communication hub. The corridors were eerily quiet, and the tension was palpable. Mark kept his eyes on the map, guiding them through the maze of tunnels. Finally, they reached the hub, a large room filled with communication terminals and Zarvian technicians. Lisa pulled out a small device and began setting up the jammer. "We'll have about 5 minutes before they figure out what's happening," she whispered. "That's all the time we need." Mark nodded and positioned himself near the entrance, ready to cover Lisa if anything went wrong. The seconds ticked by as Lisa worked quickly, connecting the jammer to the main terminal. She glanced at Mark and gave a quick nod. "Now!" Lisa whispered urgently. Mark activated the jammer, and instantly, the room was plunged into chaos. The communication systems flickered and went offline, and the Zarvian technicians scrambled to figure out what had happened. Alarms began to blare, and the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors as guards rushed to respond. At the same moment, Sarah completed her work on the power grid. She overloaded the system, causing a massive power surge that rippled through the base. Lights flickered, machines sputtered, and the base was thrown into disarray. With the base in chaos, Mark and Lisa made their escape, retracing their steps back to the rendezvous point. Sarah was already there, a satisfied grin on her face. "The power grid's down," she said. "Let's get out of here." The team hurried back to their ship, the sound of alarms still echoing through the base. Dr. Carter was ready, and as soon as they were on board, he fired up the engines and blasted out of the maintenance bay. The Zarvians were in chaos, their communications disrupted and their power grid compromised. The human team had succeeded in their first mission, and they had done it without firing a single shot. As they flew away from the Zarvian base, the team couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They had outsmarted one of the most dangerous enemies in the galaxy, and they had done it on their terms. "Good work, everyone," Dr. Carter said as they sped away. "We've made our first move. Now, let's see what the Zarvians do next." The team settled in for the journey back, their confidence growing with each passing moment. They had proven that being cowardly didn't mean being weak. Sometimes the smartest move was the one no one else saw coming. The problem grows. The victory over the Zarvians gave the human team a much-needed boost in morale, but they knew the battle was far from over. As their ship sped away from the Zarvian base, the crew gathered in the small command room to assess the situation. The holographic map of the Zarvian stronghold flickered in the center of the room, showing the chaos they had left behind. Dr. Alex Carter leaned over the console, his brow furrowed in thought. "We've disrupted their communications and taken down their power grid, but that's just the beginning. The Zarvians are not going to take this lightly. They'll regroup and come back stronger." Mark, the strategist, nodded in agreement. "We bought ourselves some time, but we also made ourselves a bigger target. The Zarvians will want revenge, and they'll be more dangerous now that they know we're capable of striking them where it hurts." Sarah, the engineer, was already running diagnostics on the ship's systems. "Our ship is holding up, but it won't last long if we get into a direct fight. We need to keep playing to our strengths, staying hidden and hitting them where they least expect it." Lisa, the communications expert, looked worried as she monitored the incoming signals. "I'm picking up a lot of chatter from the Zarvians." Dr. Carter tapped a few commands into the console, bringing up a list of recent reports from the Galactic Council. "The Council is pleased with our progress, but they're also concerned. They're warning us that the Zarvians might retaliate by targeting human colonies. We can't just sit back and wait for that to happen." The room fell silent as the team absorbed the gravity of the situation. The problem had grown far beyond what they had initially expected. The Zarvians were on high alert, and the risk to human lives was increasing by the minute. Mark broke the silence, his voice steady but urgent. "We need to think bigger. Disrupting one base isn't enough anymore. We have to cripple their entire operation in this sector. If we can take out their command ship, it might cause enough confusion to delay their attacks on our colonies." Dr. Carter considered Mark's suggestion carefully. "The command ship is heavily fortified. We can't just walk in and plant another jammer. We'll need a new strategy, something that will catch them off guard again." Sarah looked up from her console, a spark of an idea forming in her mind. "What if we sabotage their fuel supply? The Zarvian fleet relies on a rare energy source that they mine from a nearby planet. If we can disrupt their mining operation, it would cripple their fleet's ability to move and fight. Lisa's eyes lit up as she saw the potential in Sarah's plan. And if we time it right, we could cause a chain reaction that takes out their command ship along with the rest of their fleet. It would be risky, but it might just work. Dr. Carter nodded slowly, the plan taking shape in his mind. It's a bold move, but it could give us the upper hand. We'll need to gather more intel on their mining operation and find a way to get close without being detected. Mark stood up, his resolve strengthening. I'll start working on a diversion to keep the Zarvians' attention away from the mining planet. If we can make them think we're attacking another one of their bases, it might give us the cover we need. Sarah began mapping out the approach to the mining planet. I'll need to modify the ship's systems again, make sure we stay off their radar, and I'll prepare the explosives we'll need to cause the chain reaction. Lisa pulled up the communication logs, searching for patterns that might reveal the best time to strike. I'll coordinate with the Council to make sure they're ready to move as soon as we succeed. If this works, we'll need to act fast to secure the advantage. Dr. Carter looked around at his team, feeling a surge of pride and determination. This is going to be our toughest mission yet, but I know we can do it. We've faced impossible odds before, and we've come out on top. Let's get to work. The team dispersed, each member focused on their task. The ship hummed with activity as they prepared for the next phase of their mission. Despite the growing threat, there was a sense of unity and purpose among the crew. They were a small team, but they had proven that they could make a big impact. As the ship approached the mining planet, the tension grew. The Zarvians were on high alert, and the risk of being discovered was greater than ever. But the human team was determined to see their plan through. Dr. Carter guided the ship into orbit around the planet, careful to stay out of sight of the Zarvian patrols. We're in position, he said, his voice calm but focused. Mark, are you ready with the diversion? Mark's fingers flew over the controls as he set the diversion in motion. It's ready. I'm triggering the false alarms at the nearby base now. That should draw their attention away from the mining operation. Sarah finished her final checks on the explosives, her hands steady despite the tension. The charges are set. We'll need to get in and out quickly once we start the chain reaction. Lisa monitored the communication channels, her eyes scanning for any signs of suspicion from the Zarvians. So far, so good. They're taking the bait, but we'll need to move fast before they realize what's happening. Dr. Carter took a deep breath, his mind focused on the mission ahead. All right, team. This is it. Let's take them down. The problem had grown, but so had their resolve. The humans were ready to face the challenge head-on, using their intelligence and resourcefulness to turn the tide in their favor. As they moved into action, they knew that the fate of their colonies, and possibly the entire sector, rested on their shoulders. The big fight, the ship shuddered under the force of the Zarvian energy blasts. Dr. Alex Carter gripped the edge of his console, his knuckles white as he steadied himself. Shields at 50% and dropping fast. Sarah's voice crackled over the comms, her tone tense but controlled. They're not going to let us get away this time, Mark muttered, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Zarvian fleet was closing in from all sides, their ships cutting off any chance of escape. Dr. Carter took a deep breath, forcing himself to think clearly despite the chaos. We knew this was coming. Everyone stick to the plan. Sarah, divert all power to the shields and engines. Mark, prepare to launch the decoys. We need to buy ourselves some time. Sarah's fingers flew over the controls, rerouting power to strengthen the shields. The ship groaned under the strain, but the shields held, at least for now. Done! Shields are holding, but I don't know for how long. Mark activated the decoys, sending out a series of small, unmanned drones that mimicked the ship's signature. Decoys launched! That should confuse them for a few minutes. The Zarvian ships hesitated as the decoys scattered in different directions, giving the human team a brief window of opportunity. Dr. Carter didn't waste a second. Now! Full speed ahead, straight towards their command ship. Lisa, monitoring the communications, looked up in surprise. Are we really going for their command ship? It's suicide! Dr. Carter's expression was grim. It's our only chance. If we can take out their command ship, it might throw their fleet into disarray. They won't expect us to go on the offensive. Mark nodded, understanding the strategy. It's risky, but it could work. The command ship is their nerve center. Without it, They'll be disorganized and vulnerable. The ship surged forward, engines straining as it raced toward the heart of the Zarvian fleet. The decoys bought them a few precious moments, but the Zarvians were quick to adapt. Their ships converged on the human vessel, firing relentlessly. Sarah's voice was tense as she struggled to keep the ship in one piece. "Shields are down to 20%. We can't take much more of this." Mark clenched his fists, feeling the pressure mounting. "We're almost in range. We need to deliver the payload and get out of here or we're done for." Lisa's eyes widened as she intercepted a critical transmission from the Zarvian command ship. "They're aware of our plan. They're rerouting power to their shields. They're going to make it nearly impossible to break through." Dr. Carter's mind raced. They needed to act fast, or their only chance of success would slip away. "Sarah, prepare to overload the main reactor." Sarah's hands froze over the controls. "Are you serious? That could destroy us along with them." "It's a calculated risk," Dr. Carter replied, his voice steady. "If we overload the reactor and eject it at the right moment, the explosion could take out their shields long enough for us to strike." Mark exchanged a look with Dr. Carter. It was a desperate move, but they were out of options. "I'll set the targeting coordinates. We only get one shot at this." As Sarah began the sequence to overload the reactor, the ship rocked violently from another direct hit. "Shields are failing. We have to do this now." "Coordinates locked," Mark announced, his voice calm despite the danger. "On your command, Dr. Carter." Dr. Carter's heart pounded in his chest as he gave the order. "Eject the reactor. Now!" The ship lurched as the reactor was ejected, hurtling toward the Zarvian command ship. For a split second, time seemed to stand still. Then, the overloaded reactor detonated in a blinding flash of light, sending shock waves through space. The Zarvian command ship's shields flickered and failed, leaving it vulnerable. "Now, Mark!" Dr. Carter shouted. Mark unleashed the ship's remaining weapons, targeting the now exposed command ship. Explosions ripped through the Zarvian vessel as the human team's weapons found their mark. The command ship shuddered, then broke apart in a fiery explosion. A moment of stunned silence filled the human ship as they watched the destruction of the Zarvian command ship. Then cheers erupted from the crew. "We did it!" Lisa exclaimed, her voice filled with disbelief and relief. But the celebration was short-lived. The ship's alarms blared as the remaining Zarvian fleet regrouped, angry and desperate for revenge. "They're coming right at us!" Sarah warned, her hands flying over the controls. Dr. Carter knew they were in a precarious situation. "We've crippled their leadership, but they still outnumber us. We need to retreat and regroup with the Council's forces." Mark nodded. "I'm already plotting a course for the nearest jump point. We have to get out of here before they overwhelm us." As the ship turned away from the Zarvian fleet, Sarah pushed the engines to their limit, pushing the ship to its maximum speed. The Zarvian ships pursued, but without their command ship, their coordination was sloppy. Still, they fired relentlessly, and the human ship shuddered under the assault. "Almost there," Lisa called out, her eyes glued to the navigation display. The ship reached the jump point just as the Zarvians closed in. With a final burst of speed, the ship jumped to light speed, escaping the Zarvian fleet by the skin of their teeth. As they entered the relative safety of deep space, the crew slumped in their seats, exhausted but victorious. Dr. Carter let out a long breath, his hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline. "We did it," he said quietly. "We took down their command ship." Mark managed a tired smile. "But the fight's not over. We've dealt them a serious blow, but the Zarvians won't give up that easily." Dr. Carter nodded, knowing that the battle had only just begun. But for now, they had won a crucial victory. The humans had proved that even in the face of overwhelming odds, they could stand and fight, and win. The new respect, the battered human ship emerged from the jump, drifting through the relative calm of deep space. The crew, exhausted from their harrowing escape, took a moment to catch their breath. The tension in the air slowly dissipated, replaced by a quiet sense of accomplishment. Dr. Alex Carter leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes for a brief moment of rest. The mission had been far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated, but they had achieved something incredible. They had taken down the Zarvian command ship, striking a blow that the Zarvians would not soon forget. Mark's voice broke the silence. Dr. Carter, we're receiving a transmission. It's from the Galactic Council. Dr. Carter opened his eyes and sat up, adjusting his uniform. Put it through. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Counselor Tarek, one of the highest-ranking members of the Galactic Council. His expression was one of surprise and curiosity, mixed with a hint of newfound respect. Dr. Carter, Counselor Tarek began, his voice measured. We have received reports of your recent engagement with the Zarvian fleet. Is it true that you managed to destroy their command ship? Dr. Carter nodded. Yes, Counselor. We were able to execute a risky maneuver that resulted in the destruction of their command ship. It was a difficult battle, but we succeeded. Counselor Tarek's eyes narrowed slightly. And how did you manage such a feat? The Zarvians are known for their military prowess. Even the most seasoned warriors of the Galactic Council have struggled to defeat them in direct combat. Mark, who had been listening quietly, couldn't help but interject. We used a combination of strategy and determination, Counselor. The Zarvians underestimated us because they thought we were too weak, too cowardly to fight back. But we proved them wrong. Counselor Tarek studied Mark for a moment before turning his attention back to Dr. Carter. It appears that we may have misjudged your people, Dr. Carter. Humans have long been regarded as a non-threatening species, one more inclined to diplomacy than warfare. But your actions have shown that you are capable of great bravery, and perhaps more importantly, great ingenuity. Dr. Carter inclined his head in acknowledgement. We are a peaceful people by nature, Counselor, but we will not stand idly by when threatened. The Zarvians gave us no choice but to fight, and we did what was necessary to protect ourselves. Counselor Tarek's expression softened slightly. Indeed, your actions have not gone unnoticed. The Galactic Council will be convening a special session to discuss the implications of this battle. We believe that it is time to reevaluate our relationship with humanity. Sarah, who had been monitoring the ship's systems, looked up with a hint of disbelief. Are you saying that the Council is finally going to take us seriously? Counselor Tarek nodded. Yes, Lieutenant. The Council has long viewed humanity as a minor player in galactic affairs. But this incident has proven that you have the potential to be much more. We will be discussing the possibility of granting humanity greater influence within the Council, as well as additional resources to help you defend yourselves in the future. Mark exchanged a glance with Dr. Carter, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. That's a big change from how we were treated before. The Council didn't even want to hear our concerns when the Zarvians first started threatening us. Counselor Tarek sighed. I will not deny that the Council has been slow to act, but recent events have forced us to reconsider our stance. The destruction of the Zarvian command ship is a significant victory, one that has sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. Other species are taking notice, and they are beginning to see humanity in a new light. Dr. Carter leaned forward, his voice steady. We appreciate the Council's willingness to reassess its position. But know that we didn't fight this battle for recognition or power. We fought to protect our people, and we will continue to do so no matter what. Counselor Tarek nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. A noble sentiment, Dr. Carter, and one that the Council will not forget. I will be personally recommending that humanity be granted a seat on the Council, as well as access to advanced technology that can help you defend your world. Sarah's eyes widened. A seat on the Council? That's incredible, Mark grinned. Looks like we're finally getting the respect we deserve. Dr. Carter remained composed, though he couldn't deny the sense of satisfaction that welled up inside him. We will do our best to live up to the Council's expectations, Counselor, and we hope that this new respect will lead to a stronger, more cooperative relationship between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. Counselor Tarek nodded again. I believe it will, Dr. Carter. I look forward to seeing what humanity can achieve in the future. For now, I suggest you and your crew get some well-deserved rest. You've earned it. With that, the transmission ended and the view screen went dark. The crew sat in silence for a moment, processing the magnitude of what had just happened. We did it, Sarah said quietly, her voice filled with awe. We actually did it, Mark chuckled, leaning back in his chair. Not bad for a bunch of cowards, huh? Dr. Carter smiled, the weight of the past few days finally beginning to lift. Not bad at all. But remember, this is just the beginning. We've shown the galaxy what we're capable of, and now we have to live up to that potential. The crew nodded in agreement, their spirits lifted by the Council's recognition. They had faced impossible odds and come out victorious, earning not just survival, but a newfound respect that would change their place in the galaxy forever. As the ship drifted through space, the crew allowed themselves a moment of quiet celebration. They had fought bravely, outsmarted their enemies, and secured a future for humanity that was brighter than ever before. And though there were still challenges ahead, they knew that they could face them with courage, determination, and the knowledge that they were no longer seen as the galaxy's weakest link. They were respected now. They were heroes,